何色それは？
ピンク。
あ、かわいいね。
As the long summer is officially over here in Japan, it's time to say hello to pumpkin. Today we are going to meal prep this kabocha squash in the best yet simple way possible and whip up a creamy miso kabocha soup. The star of this show is Japanese kabocha squash. Do you have access to this kabocha squash? Even if not, today's recipe is perfect for other kinds of squash, so no worries. Let me share a little bit about the kabocha squash first. It's a very sweet and little nutty, and it has a light, almost fluffy texture to it. Some people say it tastes a cross between the pumpkin and sweet potatoes. Nutritionally speaking, kabocha is rich with beta-carotene because of this beautiful yellow hue. It's also loaded with fiber, iron, vitamin C and E, so there's a lot to love. When you go shopping, you want to find one that feels heavy for its size and has a hard skin without a soft spot. When you cut into, it should be tightly packed with seeds. Remember, the skin is edible. In fact, the skin contains more beta-carotene than the flesh does. It's a very hard-headed squash, so make sure to use this good heavy knife. I use this nakiri knife, which is handmade by 80 years old Japanese maker. If you want one for yourself, the link is in the description box. It's international shipping. If you are someone like me who cooks a lot of veggies, I'm sure you're gonna love this one. Now let me show you how you can meal prep this kabocha squash to stay moist and tender. First, we're gonna chop kabocha into small chunks. If you see these bumpy hard parts, feel free to remove them. To make it easier to cut, even before cutting, just pop the entire kabocha into the microwave at 600 watt for 3 to 4 minutes. In a way, you don't end up having a hard time chopping it like me.
硬い。おお。硬い。
We're gonna blend everything together later on, so the size doesn't matter. Just remember, the bigger it gets, the longer it takes to cook. We're gonna steam kabocha squash first without using a steamer basket. All we need is a pan with a large surface space. Transfer kabocha to the pan. Make sure the skin side is down. If it's the other way around, your kabocha squash will crumble apart. Once it's placed nicely, pour water. I did about half cup of water just above the skin to be fully submerged. It depends on how big your pan is and also how much kabocha squash that you are cooking with. Bring it to the stove and start heating up on high. Once it comes to a boil, close the lid and wait for 15 to 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, you have this perfectly cooked, moist and tender kabocha squash ready. This is how I meal prep kabocha squash. Alternatively, you can pop this in the microwave or bake it in the oven. I actually did both methods in the past video, but I find that the steaming in the pan is the best way in terms of how the texture comes out. When you do that in the oven, it gets dry so easily and it becomes so hard a couple days after. But this way, steaming way, it will last at least 3 to 4 days in the fridge and stay moist and tender. This time I'm making soup, but you can chop them up and add it to the salad or pasta. Add it to the leftover soup, for my case, tomato soup, to change up the taste a little bit. Or you can add it to the miso soup. I love the combination of miso and kabocha squash. I have a miso udon noodle soup recipe in my vegan cookbook, so let me put the link in the description box for you. Finally, we can make a creamy kabocha soup, which is kid-friendly and perfect for meal prep. Thinly sliced onion and celery. The hint of bitterness from celery complements the sweetness of kabocha very well. I use shimeji mushroom for today, but use any kind of mushrooms you have on hand. Mushrooms add umami taste and aroma. Then to the pot on medium heat, add high heat oil. I use rice oil as always. Add all the vegetable at once. Give it a stir and add shiokoji or salt. Shiokoji is a rice malt and salt being fermented. It's sweet, salty, and packed with umami flavor all in one. And also great for your gut health because it's fermented. So I use it as a substitution of salt. I'll introduce more on my top 10 Japanese condiments video coming up in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned. Give it a one more stir and close the lid. Lower the heat to low and steam it for 10 minutes. If you are using raw kabocha squash as opposed to opting for steamed kabocha, which is what we are going to do in this video, go ahead and add raw kabocha at this point. If that's the case, steam it until the kabocha is fully cooked. Splash some water if it's needed during this steaming process. After 10 minutes, you can see the onion is nice and tender. At this point, add steamed kabocha. We don't waste any of the juice from the steamed kabocha. Add water when everything is soft enough to smash with your spatula. Time to blend the soup. In my experience, you want to make it as smooth as possible when it comes to this kabocha squash soup. Because the kabocha squash has a lot of fiber in it, the creamier, the better. At least for my kids, they eat better. Just a little tip about the kabocha, the beta-carotene that's in the kabocha squash will be better absorbed when it's combined with oil. Once everything is nicely blended, add milk. I use soy for today, but use any type of milk you have on hand. I cooked with regular milk and oat milk before. Both worked very well. I just find that the soy milk brings a thicker texture, which I love. Now it's time to season the soup. Take miso paste to the bowl and dissolve it with a little bit of soup before adding into the soup. In a way, you won't have a lump. The only seasoning before miso is 1 tablespoon of shiokoji. I have intention for this. I wanted to wait until the last moment since each kabocha squash has a different level of sweetness. And I wanted to add anything salty and savory to make the natural sweetness shine through the most. The natural sweetness of kabocha squash is the star of this recipe. So from now, we are going to add butter and salt to adjust the taste to your liking. A little bit goes a long way. As you can see, my soup is on the thicker side, but feel free to loosen up the soup by adding a bit more milk or water. Pour yourself a generous amount of thick, creamy, sweet soup along with a sprinkle of freshly crushed black pepper. I have been making this soup ever since my older one was born. We went through different kinds of pureed vegetable as a baby food and I had lots of leftovers, which is usually not so enjoyable to eat for adults. So this soup allows us to take a small portion for kids first before adding any seasonings. So it worked so well for us. It's still being my kids' favorite and I wanted to share it with you, especially early moms. If you're one of them, please leave me a comment on what your kids like the most. I have a kabocha walnut spread and a couple more kabocha recipes, so link is in the description box as always. Also, if you need extra support to create a healthy habit by incorporating traditional Japanese cooking methods, I'm currently in the process of making an online course. My first 6 pilot students have almost finished the course and been seeing amazing positive changes in their life, which makes me so happy. I'm thinking of welcoming 15 students when it's officially launched so that I can closely communicate with all of my students. So check out the link in the description box for more details. That's it for today. Thanks a lot for watching and happy Halloween. Bye bye, mata ne. Hello again. I just want to say thank you so much for your kind comments on my community post about my first talk, upcoming speech. I still gonna be very nervous in the backstage, but I'm sure that I will look over your comments to just calm myself, to feel the home in my heart, if that makes sense. So thank you so much for your kind support. It's coming in a week. Thank you. Bye. Mata ne.